Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
How are we doing?
Very well.
Well, let's start with an easy one. Emma, what's the state of the restaurant industry in Dubai at the moment?
I think when we talked about this, you said you were going to ask me, is it all doom and gloom?
Well, let me put it that way.
And what's the state of the restaurant industry in Dubai? Is it all doom and gloom, and is that just hype? I think there's two sides to this, actually. The restaurant industry in Dubai, we are actually reaching oversaturation. There's more restaurants per capita than Paris, London, Rome. So in terms of F&B, we are thoroughly overrepresented. A lot of developments opening, so, you know, we went down to La Mer yesterday and we enjoyed the lovely venue, Masti, and their hospitality. But, you know, down at La Mer, it's 1.8 kilometres of reclaimed land, and I think there's over 40 F&B concepts down there. And we all know that there's going to be 5 months of the year it's not going to operate because it's too hot. So it's not only the number of F&B, it's in the locations. Seasonality makes it tough. There's a lot of competition with events. We talked about pop-ups and festivals, and there's more F&B and malls. However, on the other side, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. Market forces will prevail. The strong will survive. Those with clear concepts that are relevant and responding to consumer demand, you know, those that are looking at innovation, sustainability, and responding consumer trends, they will survive, and they'll come through, you know, the regular opening and closing. And we just have to look, there are some really, really cool legacy brands in Dubai that have survived the test of time and are still surviving all the new kids on the block. So I actually just think Dubai's hitting a level of maturity, and now it's a case of the strong will survive.
Naim, do you agree on the level of maturity that Dubai is hitting? And is it doom and gloom, or are we actually doing okay?
Yeah, look, I don't believe maturity is applicable to our market. I think it's still a very young market. I think we shouldn't confuse maturity and oversaturation. Maturity for me is markets like the UK, like Tokyo, where you have the volume, the masses actually support the industry. At the moment, the formula of supply and demand doesn't match. And as my colleague Emma mentioned, the mix of per capita, or the availability per capita, restaurant-wise, for the amount of people that actually spend, the 500,000 that we're all after, doesn't tally up. So I think for organizations that have deep pockets and have different objectives than running a business, organizations like building brands and building cities and building destinations, I think it's excellent times to be in the market, and sooner than later they'll make money, sooner than later they'll survive, blossom and do very well. The issue is the guys who have little pockets, keep kind of changing the concept, and keep addressing trends which come and go. Tough market to be in, but I think it's now time to consolidate, time to focus and really head down and focus on the business moving forward.
Reif, I mean, from your perspective, you know, you've gone from Zuma to the play experience, and now Flavio Briatore is putting a big stamp on what he's doing in the marketplace. What's your feeling with regards to where we're at?
Well, I guess Dubai market is matured, 100%. But nevertheless, we have a lot of vibrant entrepreneurs who wants to open up. And it's like a trend now. Everyone wants to open a restaurant here and there. It's like a mushroom, like we had talked today. So everybody just popping up here and there. But I guess we have to support the homegrown, definitely, for sure. And there's a potential. And nevertheless, also, we always have this challenge of having a very expensive rent that we have to pay. Not only that, the cost of the whole business. Setting up a restaurant is not just bank. You have to think about the rent, the staff, the manning, and you know, the whole exercise of having a restaurant is just not easy. So, like Naim was saying, you know, it's all about the cash flow. You know, it's all about, you know, big pockets, small pockets, but you have to be smart. And I mean, this is how I look at it, you know.
I've got to say, I'm impressed that Naim wasn't the first person to bring rent up on this panel, because I think in the panel we've ever done, he's the first.
I'm not done yet.
First one to talk about landlord. Ramzy, entrepreneur as yourself, what's your kind of gut feeling as to where we're sitting? Are you comfortable with where the market's at?
I don't think anybody's comfortable where the market is. But it would be unfair to say Dubai is alone in that state around the world. So if you look maturity-wise with the point that was raised earlier, a lot of other cities venues that are closing and opening, it tends to be an existing venue that closes because you can't get a new venue. The city's already developed. Dubai continues to expand, hence these new projects, beach projects, desert projects, expansion projects with Expo, etc. So the city is growing left and right, up and down. By definition, there are more locations coming. You're not tending to see existing operators of anybody on this stage that is really expanding much more into those. You're seeing, the fast casual, the Starbucks, all of those that effectively have to be in all these operations and all these locations. Where you are seeing new entrants to the market, it's not really any of us. It tends to be people that need a location because they've got a new brand. They like the idea of coming here. Dubai has a real glitz and glamour and attraction to it. And people say, well, I want to come there because if I'm seen there and I do well, I can go all over the world. And that was our vision of starting, 14 years ago, was exactly that: build brands here and expand from here. And people still want that dream, because if you do well here, the rest of the region, and now many other cities in the world, pay attention. Because if you can crack it here, this is a tough city now. It is a global 10th city in the world, but it's a difficult business. But restaurants all over the world are a difficult business. It's the highest failure rate in any industry, in reality. So I don't think it's doom and gloom like Emma said, but it's only the good operator, or that Emma was saying it's not, right? It's only the good operators that will ultimately survive.
So as we're approaching this level of maturity, and I say approaching, we're not there yet, we're moving towards it, and there's levels of saturation in the different market areas. Are we going to see less investment in homegrown? Is this going to sort of push that entrepreneurial spirit to go, I'm just going to go out and create something brand new, because obviously we're reaching that point where we want to guarantee some form of success for outlets going forward? I'm happy to throw that open to
Not necessarily. I don't think people will stop investing and developing new concepts. As a matter of fact, I see a lot more investors like myself leaning towards homegrown, because we have a lot more control, we have a lot more say, we have a lot more involvement, and we have a lot more shaping what the business is going to be like without the fees that come with it. So I think you'll see a lot more development on the local ground. Again, within Gates, I'm fueling the whole local heroes, people who are here, who understand the market, who understand what we do best, who understand the culture, the society, the community, and the likes, and fueling that chapter.
Emma, is that the direction for JRG as well?
Yeah, I suppose we sit with a foot in both camps. We've got some fantastic legacy brands that have stood the test of time, and what we've done is identify 3 or 4 brands that we know are still very popular but actually need a refresh. So we're doing them, we're going through 2.0 with them. We've identified Noodle House, Al Nafour, and a couple of other brands that we're actually revisiting and actually continuing. And, I'll be announcing some new signings for Noodle House shortly in the city. And we're closing brands that we don't believe are relevant anymore. On the other side, I'm also working with our partners at Dubai Retail, and we are speaking to a number of international brands that are not represented in the market yet, because we have a whole land bank of assets to bring concepts into. And so we are investing both in reinvesting in our existing brands to 2.0. We're investing in new concepts. We launched Flow a year ago today, celebrated its first birthday, and we're looking for new locations for that. And at the same time, we also want to bring in international partners, because we think there is a gap in the market for proven, cool, experiential concepts. I don't think we're necessarily down the sort of celebrity chef route, more established concepts in other markets with F&B operators in other markets. So we've got a foot in both camps, because there's risk and opportunity on both sides.
Both sides, of course. Reif, from your perspective from play, you had play and then you moved into sort of play, the experience by play, experience. Compare the two of those. How did they sit in the market? Which do you feel had more kind of a success rate in your mind with regards to customer?
Play did very well for the first year opening, and at the same time also we did a pop-up in Cannes. It was good to bring us, bring a play out from Dubai. And for the then we just opened a franchise in Bahrain. And I think from where I am before in Zuma, looking at the trend of what's coming up, and I see like a lot of people hate the fine dining kind of dinner. We have a tablecloth, you have someone watching over you every day and then, clearing every second of the little breadcrumbs dropping on the table, and people like music, people like good food, and talk and chat, you know, and this is what they want. So when we open up Play, and I see that, listen, I'm not going to do all this crap. I want to have a good music, good food, consistent food, where I can do like 400 to 300 covers every night. And at the same time, I said, we have a good element of the lounge. And that really hits up. And I can see the clientele that I have. I have to be honest, the customer that we have before, back then, it's all GCC. Hardly to see the Europeans, I'm sorry to say. Maybe just a pool. But the experience was in the other way. I expect we have a lot of local, I mean like all the expert over here. I have about 80% of my customer coming from US, from Denmark, from Asia, and only like maybe 10% are all from Dubai.
Right.
So I can see that, you know, I think Play hits up well, what you said, the drive in terms of what we want to do. Achieve.
It was being discussed earlier this morning, you know, Ramzy, about the positioning, I guess, you know, once again, as we get to this market, do we rely still on tourism? How much of our focus when we create a brand like Play or like Folly, Perry and Blackwell or Oku, does it need to be about, we need to look after the people around our neighborhood first?
I mean, I think Dubai is a fantastic incubator where a whole raft of new brands have opened here that have done extremely well. And it's kind of eye-opening how well some of them have done. And it's very encouraging to see that. So to answer to your question, I think more will continue because people are encouraged by that. And we'd love to see more of that happening. I think, you know, in answer to your question, yes, there are brands like us that do well, and we all want to expand. And Dubai is that area where you're starting here and going out from here. And so Play has done very well. We're doing it now. We're opening in Saudi and in other countries. And people are now wanting to franchise brands out of Dubai. And that's a very powerful story and a success story, not just with us as Oku and Klo and a few of our other brands, but with all of the brands that all of us here have created. I think it's very positive for the market.
Yeah, good. One of the things that has once again been a prevalent topic today that we've all heard repeatedly is the cost of rent. I won't make you stand up. But so the question I've got around this is: Are we in a position now, given that rents are, you know, without, you know, cutting and dicing it too badly, they're excessive compared to what they were 5, 6, 7 years ago? You know, can we be pushing more on this percentage rent turnover so we share a bit of the risk and the rewards? So the owner, the landlord's got the opportunity to make on the upside, and if we're struggling and we're having a tough summer, you know, we all pitch into the pain. Naim, I'm going to throw to you first.
Yeah, look, we heard this morning from Time Out, mature market, they investing as a landlord, they're investing, subleasing principally. That's exactly how we should be looking at this market moving forward. If it's not a percentage turnover, the landlord, I think, in order to move forward, and you're seeing it at the point at the minute, the landlord has claimed 4 or 5 of the units that hasn't been able to palm off. So I think that the tables will change further. I think every time I'm making a phone call now, the landlords are listening. They're accommodating for meetings. Have we seen a change on the rent factor? Not as yet, but it will happen sooner than later. And I think not only rent issues, but I think they'll entertain and accommodate for a lot more. Whatever's behind the ceiling, whatever, as an operator, as an investor, when I pack up and leave, I think should be invested by the landlord. And again, I think landlords are waking up to say, okay, who's the asset owner? Who's actually winning long term by these investors positioning my asset?
Yep, good point.
I think what's really interesting, as I was just touching on just before, I'm working with international restaurant groups, predominantly in the States and in Europe, and I'm doing the business model for them. You know, they provide me with all their key metrics. Obviously, when we're quite far down the road with about 8 different groups, And they provide me with their key metrics, all their key ratios, and then I obviously convert that into Dubai language. And we look at an ROI. And what really stands out is the rent to sales ratio. You know, in Europe and the States, they're all sort of talking about 10 to 12%. And in Dubai, we think we've hit perfection if it's like around 15. If we can get around 12 to 15% in Dubai, you know, we're at perfection. If you're in sort of fixed base rent models. So that kind of highlighted the difference in the current economies, you know, in if you were to come into Dubai, your rent to sales ratio is quite challenging. But in terms of following on from what the guys are saying, I do think landlords are listening. I mean, I'm quite in an interesting position because, you know, my landlords are all my work colleagues as well. We're separate verticals, but, you know, I negotiate with my colleagues. But with the market compressing, you know, it's not just looking at base rent, occupational rent, and whether you go to a turnover rent. I think landlords are starting to listen and be more creative around back of house rents, terrace rents, seasonality rents. You know, we're now for the first time ever in Dubai, I think, hearing more and more about rent freezes on external terraces during the summer periods. You know, thank goodness. So I think there's a whole host of discussions going around in the rental space.
Absolutely.
But I think 15% just doesn't work. I mean, the reality is the financial model.
It's too difficult.
It's not right. You can't make any money. You end up working for the landlord. And, you know, there are, unfortunately, you are seeing still the new entrants to the market. You get some great independents that want to open a brand and have a vision. The financing of it doesn't help. There's zero debt available in this market for a new entrant. It's either friends and family or a sugar daddy or a sugar mummy that's going to come in. Emma's not the sugar mummy. So, but that's the reality. You need someone with a lot of money to help you open a place, even if it's small. Naim could be the sugar daddy with his pink outfit today.
Thank you, Ramzy.
You're welcome, buddy. So, you know.
You can tell it's the end of the day, can't you? It's obvious.
It's a long day still.
I'm not done.
No.
Not done yet. Yeah. Where was I? Lost my train.
That's okay. Think about that for a second. Reif, DIFC, Flavio Briatore Group has just gone and put Beef Bar and Crazy Fish into DIFC. Is DIFC what it was 5-6 years ago? Is the demand for dining out, destination dining, because the rents, from my understanding, are still hovering at that substantially high level.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, crazy fish.
Crazy.
There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but is it worth investing in those places, or is it worth these days looking at, you know, lower rental opportunities, but not necessarily the big demand footfall places that we've done in the past?
Well, I wasn't in that phase when they clock in.
Okay.
And I was shocked that they took that space because I want to get out from the IFC. It's just too much there. I'd rather go to the nearby neighborhood like GLT, even Riberanches. It's a nice area to be in, whereby, you know, we can put up a pretty good restaurant in there. But to be in the IFC, yes, some people might say that it's good. But for me, the rent is just too much.
It all depends on the brand. It all depends what you're trying to position, the concept. Neighborhoods, if you put a international brand in a neighborhood...
Of course, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, yeah, definitely.
Going back to my pet hate of the rent, I think it doesn't stop at 15% because you have service charge, you have liquor handling fees, and you have... So by the time you finish, you're looking at 20-odd%. And I think the onus is on our shoulders to say, no more. No, we don't do these things, and we need to stop signing these leases and get the landlords to wake up and say, we're part of this community, we're part of this economy, and without the F&B investment, really, who's going to fuel this chapter?
Yeah, true. But what you are saying, I was just to carry on the thought from earlier, not Naim's pink, but the new places are opening to support these sort of great new ideas that are coming and concepts. But the big money into the big places that are opening, and bigger isn't always better, but there are some massive places opening. That is effectively either an ego investment of someone that says, hey, I want to be an F&B, or is someone that says, hey, I'm going to create something massive and I'm going to roll it out, and I've got a ton of money to spend, because they think F&B is an easy business, and it's not. But those people coming into the market are causing an issue because they are willing to pay these higher rents. So you can't actually blame the landlord or these, you know, as Gaurav said, few people that control 80% of the space. Because if someone's willing to pay, you're going to rent it to them at that price. But they come in because that's the only way they can effectively get a location. And then they mess the market up a little bit more by overpaying for staff or paying for the wrong staff in the wrong position. So it makes life more difficult in the sector overall. And by definition, those are the ones that are likely to fail.
Okay. I'm going to lighten the load a little bit. Emma, what do you think's missing in the market right now?
Well, there's not a lot missing in Dubai per se, but reading and hearing about trends and looking, I mean, on a personal level, I think Thai is an opportunity. You know, we can sort of name 3 or 4 really good Thai restaurants in Dubai. So I think that's a gap. I think Filipino, by all accounts, is underrepresented. The Filipino market, and obviously we've got a massive demographic here, so Filipinos are underestimated. We are starting to see very well represented in the market is around health and wellness, paleo, etc. Hashtag paleo is one of the top searched hashtags. But I think missing is something that we're researching more as a group is not just vegetarian but not just vegan as well. And I'm pushing my team to look past vegan and actually at this whole veganism and this dirty vegan, as it's called, and it's actually food that looks like burgers and steaks and everything, but it's actually vegan food. And there's a lot of products that are going to be needed to brought into the market to sustain that and allow us to do that. So I think there's going to be a supply chain issue, but I think those are some opportunities in the market.
Ramzy, now that you're opening a Thai and Filipino restaurant, what else are you doing going forward?
Well, we just opened a healthy sort of gastro cafe called Sophie's in Bersha Heights, and we're looking at rolling out a few more of those. There's definitely that element of the market that people want, but those as the healthy ones are great, you know, morning, afternoon, they just don't do so well at night. And they're good in communities. Great with business communities and some sort of local communities, but they're never going to generate the massive revenue. So from a business model perspective, those pretty much have to be in hotel type outlets, because if you're renting from a mall, you're never going to make ends meet. You know, the expansion of what Reif was saying about he wouldn't have opened in DIFC if he's been involved at the beginning, and you want to open in a community area, I think it would be amazing to do that. But very few communities have the ability where you can have alcohol. So Naim is lucky enough to have a location for the reform, but those are few and far between. If you had that ability, that you could have venues with, you know, licensed beverages in communities, I think they do extremely well.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree?
Yeah.
I mean, that actually takes me on to the next question.
So before you move to the next question, what's missing in this market, in my humble opinion, is very straightforward. It's not cuisines, but it's good, honest service by operators who are actually here, who are connected to the business, who run the business day in, day out. And you see that in Europe, you see it in Portugal. You go to a restaurant, the waiter comes up to the table, he's been working in that same restaurant for the last 20 years. He comes up with his white shirt, well pressed, iron, his shoes are shining, his handkerchief is... And he can talk to you for hours about anything and everything, including the food. And we don't have that in the UAE. And this is market maturity. This is what I'm talking about. This is where we need to, the mindset has to shift. We need to cater for people who reside here. Unlike in the past where people came into Dubai, 2 years, moved on. A lot of us are living here for 20 years. A lot of the people have been here for, so this is home for however long or short, but this is home. So we're moving away from the transient into this is home for a lot of people now.
So just hang on that point quickly, because I know I'm watching the clock, because we talked about this briefly before, seasonality of staff. Is that perhaps a way that we could end up having more staff for longer, but for 6 months of the year?
We need authorities, we need a government to step in order to facilitate visas, facilitate workload, facilitate, otherwise commercially. I have 6 centres in Bay. We bring people from Turkey across for seasons, we take them back. By the time you house them, by the time you spend money on their flights, visas and all of that, financially it makes absolutely no sense. And also, we're doing a disservice to our client, because if you come when these people aren't there, what message are you sending to the people?
True.
But to answer a question you asked earlier, concepts should be created for the local community here.
Definitely.
Because that's who's going to fill your venue week in, week out. The tourist is great if you're in JBR or in a particular tourist location, but they're here a week or two a year, and every week you're trying to get a new one. But if you cater to the people that live and work in Dubai, they will come more regularly, they'll bring their guests, they'll bring their friends, and then the tourists will hear about it and the place gets busier. That will give you longevity of a business model.
Yeah.
Reif's everyone's in agreement on the local market.
Yeah, definitely.
I think on that note, given that we're stretching the day out a bit, I won't throw questions. I'm looking for guidance. No. Okay, everyone's going to be...
One question there.
There's one question.
Alfred.
Very quickly. Alfred, come on, stand up and yell it.
I'm sorry, guys, but we're talking about trends, and you've been attending many conferences over the years in Dubai, and this topic is all the time, every time we talk about it, and nothing is happening. We keep on talking about it, nothing is happening. The government won't listen to you if you don't go and knock on the door of the government and say to the government, we want you to help us regulate this issues here. So what's stopping?
That's
exactly
what the industry
what the think tank is about. That's the reason that we've formed the think tank, is to work out over the next 12 months how to activate that and how to action that.
Because this sector is an industry is very important here. If it's done right, it creates a lot of jobs. And when you create jobs and the restaurants do well, those people bring their families come to visit, their friends come to visit. It does well for tourism, the sector does better, they stay here. I mean, there's a huge knock-on effect. So the point of that think tank is to be able to support the industry and all stakeholders. It's not a selfish, oh, let's just get the rent down and keep Naim happy. Well, correct. That's why that think tank has been created.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank my panel, Reif, Naim, Emma, and Ramzy.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.